Hey guys, what's going on? Fizz here once again with a new build. This one is not showcased pre-league start because I didn't finish the POB. It was available in my Discord, but I just hadn't put much work into it, even though this was my planned league starter. And I ended up just swapping last second due to a Reddit comment I read that convinced me to just start my own build and show that it is doable. And I decided to play this the other day. I just got really tilted farming the fizz leech stuff. So we have physics not dead, just bored was born, and I figured this league seems like very kind of like phoned in from GG, to be honest, very casual league. So I was like, I'm just gonna play whatever I feel like when I play, or when I feel like it, and I'll just go, you know, when I log in for the day, whatever I decide to do, that's what I'm gonna do. So I felt like doing this. So there was a reroll the other day, and I actually haven't been playing too much PoE, funnily enough. Well, maybe thinking like, well, dude, I looked on your Twitch and you stream like 20 hours into like 15 or 16 hours into like 10 hours every day. It's like, yeah, but like usually this far in though, I'm still streaming like, you know, 16-hour days for the first week plus, and relatively those stream times have been more or less cut in half. Just because of like real life stuff and just being like more tired and stuff. It's not really due to me like not wanting to play the game and stuff. I've just been pretty exhausted lately. That being said, let's get into the character. The character's level 88. I'm gonna throw in a map real quick. I am capable of doing red maps on the character already, but I'm gonna go ahead and throw in this white map because I've been farming white maps ad nauseum trying to get cluster jewels, because I need it for both this and the Reap character. But they just won't drop, and that's annoying. Anyway, so let's run through real quick. Basically, the TLDR of this build is it's like Toxic Rain, just like better in every possible way in terms of playstyle, because I hate Toxic Rain. I think it's incredibly clunky. I don't think it's fun at all. But the cool part about like Bleed is that I'm not stacking a ramping dot. I hit once and then that's my bleed. So anything that gets clipped or touched at all by these arrows will get a dot on it, and then that's the end of it. I think a lot of people were calling bleed bow bait and stuff at the beginning of the league, and then I had some people in my chat like, you know, like, why are you playing this? It's like worse than the helmet version. Snipe sucks. And Snipe is actually really OP, and I'll get into why it's OP after the map. But Snipe is actually really OP, and even though the helmet does more damage, which of course they would have to do something like Snipe, they either had to buff the helmet or make Snipe not as good as the helmet, right? Like they had to do one of the two, otherwise they'd be effectively deleting the item from the game, you know what I mean? Anyway, so yeah, you would want to use Haemophilias to supplement clear on this build, but as you can see, the build doesn't really have issues with clear even without them. It's totally quality of life, not mandatory or necessary at all, for sure. The clearing doesn't really look any different either. I have done up to, even though the character is only level 88, on my first day of mapping on the character, I done up to T14 maps on him, and he was not struggling at all, not even like single target DPS on the boss. It was just very comfortable, no issues whatsoever. I just realized, oh my god, I tried to self PK. I just realized that there was no delirium mirror in this map, so I probably should have gotten a map beforehand that had delirium on it. And if you were wondering why my health just chunks so hard, it's because I double tapped Corrupting Fever without checking my adrenaline. So we're using the adrenaline tech, but I had popped the Corrupting Fever before adrenaline was off. So I just like ate like 60% of my life for no reason before the boss died. Anyway, that's more or less the map. I don't need to full clear the whole thing. You guys get the idea, right? Like, it's just, you like shoot up, everything, you know, everything dies. That's, you know, it's Rain of Arrows. So originally the POB had split arrow. I still prefer split arrow to Rain of Arrows. I just don't like ground targeted projectile skills. I feel like they feel bad to play. I really like having that like off-screen potential, that range. I feel like it's a lot comfier, and it doesn't, I feel like ground targeted projectile skills, it's that mix of the slight delay on the damage and having to aim on stuff that I find annoying, but it's way less egregious on this than something like Toxic Rain, because like I said, it's not ramping. I don't need to like really aim. I kind of just shoot wherever, and as long as any single one of those little projectiles touches something, the dot's on it, and I don't have to worry about it. I ended up not using split arrow because the new Crucible mod, the 300% more damage with bleeding on Rain of Arrows. That mod is insane. I haven't actually checked because it's got a mix. This bow is GG, by the way. I'm not going to show you the other mods until I go over the gear, but I haven't actually checked Toxic Rain or put it into Path of Building. It may be more damage, but I doubt it than Rain of Arrows. Maybe it is though. If it is, then it would probably be better to use because you would get like the extra slow from the vines grabbing stuff, but I haven't POB'd it or looked at it at all, so who knows. Anyway, where are we gonna start? The passive tree. We'll start with the passive tree. So why are we playing champ? That clip from Ben, I'm pretty sure was put on Reddit. You guys already know this. You don't need me to tell you this. A better player has already told you this, and if that wasn't enough to convince you, then nothing will. But basically, champ is just obviously one of, if not the best ascendancies in the game overall. And there's nothing that Glad offers that champ doesn't. Obviously, bleed pops are better on Glad than Haemophilias, but that's not really worth taking an entire ascendancy for because you don't really get anything else from it. Like you can say like challenger charges, like sure you get some extra move speed there, but champ still gets a lot of attack speed by itself anyway. All the extra aura effect and the banners not reserving mana lets you fit an extra aura. First strike last to fall is permanent adrenaline even while bossing and stuff, which is just tons of damage. And then obviously it's permanent onslaught effectively while bossing. And then Unstoppable Hero also gives 20% more attack speed, or increased attack speed, excuse me. So that's 45% total between First to Strike and Unstoppable Hero. And then Fortitude, obviously taking way less damage. Fortify is really strong. Now, here's the huge thing. Cannot be stunned while fortified is actually massive. Before clicking this node, it was very noticeable. Like you're charging up your snipe, and if something hits you, like a strong monster that will hit you for a decent amount, it would just stun you out of snipe, and then you wouldn't get a max snipe off, and that was really annoying. And stun immunity is something champ gets for free, so there's a ton of synergy here with this build in general. And then obviously if you want bleed pops, you'll just use Haemophilias. If you're playing in trade league, you should be able to get these no problem, and then just swap them out whenever you boss. But SSF you have to play without until you get them, and luckily the build doesn't feel bad without them, because that was one of my big concerns league starting this, was especially with split arrow. Split arrow is a little bit more reliant on those bleed pops for clear than Rain of Arrows is, because the damage spread isn't as even. However, it felt completely fine. I ended up using Rain of Arrows. I used Splitting Steel from 1 to 12, and then used Rain of Arrows from then on, and just leveled as Bleed Bow from 12 onwards. With that out of the way, what about the actual passive tree? So there are some changes to this tree that I made for a few different reasons, but there's some changes to this tree that I made strictly based off the Crucible tree that I have on my current bow. The original tree paths out the right side because you need more dex on the build. You need to get more dex on the build, and you path for Deadly Draw, which opens up some additional clearing as well. The issue is that my bow gave me Deadly Draw for free and gave me a bunch of dex for free. So I didn't need to path out the right side anymore, and I ended up saving like 5 or 6 passive points total. And the original tree also pathed for Vitality Void to get 10% of leeches instant, because obviously Rain of Arrows, all those projectiles can hit multiple times. So like while bossing, you'll like snipe them, and then you'll spam Rain of Arrows in the meantime, which gives you just tons of hits, tons of raw hits to get a bunch of life gain every time it hits. So That's a bunch of extra sustain for the build, so I took a leech mastery. However, the tree, from not needing to path over here, I rerouted it to instead path up through here, and linking the tree through Juggernaut and not taking Bloodless, actually. So it goes up through here. However, I haven't respec'd it yet, and I don't have enough regrets to do so. But whenever I do reroute the tree, it will save me some passive points. Anyway, so just keep in mind that there are some changes here that are due to me having a specific Crucible Tree. Anyway, path out the left side, or if you don't have the bow, the right side, you know, through all these nodes here. Nothing really here needs to be talked about. Bloodlighting is really important. So there's 2 bleed nodes on the entire tree. You have to grab both of them. You actually have to. You need the chance to bleed. That's the one thing that Glad has, really, at this point, is the bleed pops and chance to bleed. We don't get that on Champ, so even if you take all the bleed nodes on the tree, you'll only have 95% chance to bleed while using chance to bleed support. So you have to get that last 5% somewhere. Now, to my understanding, that's not really an issue on Puncture, because Puncture always bleeds. But for Rain of Arrows, you want to get that bleed chance up, right? So you can get chance to bleed on Glove Implicit. You can get it on your actual Crucible Tree on the bow. You can roll the mod on bow, increase damage with bleeding, chance to bleed. Now, increased damage with bleeding is like not really a good mod to have on your weapon. Every other mod that's beneficial to you is going to deal way more damage effectively than that increased damage with bleeding. However, that chance to bleed is nice since it caps it off. Anyway, that said, we path through the right side of Bloodletting. Left side does give you that damage multi, but again, we need the chance to bleed. And then we grab the Bleed Mastery for 60% increased bleed duration. That's huge. Typical Aura nodes, typical Soul of Steel node. I path, again, through Bloodless, so the entry that I POB does path through this top side here and links up through Juggernaut instead. But pathing through Bloodless, up, grabbing life nodes as you go, and up into Savage Wounds. Again, pathing the right side for bleed chance here. Once you get bleed chance on your Crucible Tree, or chance to bleed on your weapon, or potentially the implicit on gloves, that's not the bottom one, you can drop the right side here and path left side for faster bleeds, which will be a DPS increase. Obviously, we need Resolute Technique. We don't care about pathing Precise Technique, because this is attack damage. Now, something important to mention with bleed builds before these questions get asked, because they've been asked a lot on stream. Why don't you go for attack damage stuff? Because attack damage does not increase the damage of bleed. Increases to attack damage it effectively works the same as increases to spell damage for spell-based builds. So like increased spell damage won't increase the damage of your ailments like poison or ignite. Increases to attack damage will not increase bleed damage. So that's how that works. Though the wording will be slightly confusing considering the new physical mastery, 10% more maximum physical attack damage. That is technically different than attack damage increases. This just means that your physical attack roll can roll higher. That's all that means. So this is a different stat, and this does give us damage. So just be aware of that. Anyway, pathing Vanquisher on right side for Fizz dot multi, it's just increased Fizz damage. I grabbed Tireless here for the reduced cost. That will not be in the endgame tree. And then Veteran Soldier, you know, pathing only the top side here to get the other Fizz mastery. Going through Dynamo to get that guard, that juicy guard skill duration. And then the Mana Mastery for Mana Reservation Efficiency. And linking the tree up through this side. Pathing over for Mage Bane, Reflexes, and the Evasion Mastery, and also grabbing Profane Chemistry for more life, and the Mastery here for life on Flask usage. Yeah, and that's more or less the whole tree, except for this top side. You may think this looks pretty awkward. Mostly just looks awkward because I haven't grabbed Devotion yet. Once Devotion fills in, then it's only 2 passive nodes of travel towards this top side. And I go for Sovereignty. So the original POB of the build was using Divine Blessing. Now the issue with Divine Blessing is that it took up 4 links, which meant that I had to weapon swap for Adrenaline. Now, this is how I played the character until very recently. I just got my triple aura online, but this build is technically objectively worse than the Divine Blessing weapon swap setup. However, playing Divine Blessing weapon swap is cancerous and not fun. So I made the build slightly worse. So we lose like a little bit of damage and like a little bit of life. The biggest annoyance of the build is you need 1 to 2 unset rings. So you kind of lose like your ring implicits. That's like the biggest thing. However, I'm willing to do that to have the build feel infinitely better to play. As you could see, I'm running through that map. Literally all I do, hit W once every 20 seconds to proc my adrenaline and spam rain of arrows. It's that simple versus what I was doing before. My weapon swap is Shift E. So I would Shift E, right click, Shift E, Divine Blessing. And I had to do that every 15 or so seconds. Shift E, right click, Shift E, Divine Blessing. And then you still have other stuff to worry about too. So that was like really annoying. So if you're cool with that, then you can go for that. And then you just, tireless, get that reduced, cost, anoint Righteous Decree for reduced mana cost of skills. And then, grab another, mana mastery right here, 3 points with battle rouse to grab, 10% reduced mana cost of skills. And then you can run Divine Blessing with an inspiration. So yeah, you can do that if you want, but that felt really cancerous to me. So I made the build technically slightly worse to have massive quality of life improvements. And that's everything on the passive tree. Obviously, once I get a Fizz Cluster Jewel, we're going to throw it over here. Just a large. Probably not going to go for mediums on this build since it's already strapped for points, more or less, of stuff that I want that is not pertaining to like Cluster Jewels. Just one large to get that increased damage, and then that's probably it. Aside from that, I guess we'll get into the gym links. So in my helmet, I'm running Corrupting Fever, Brutality, Life Tap, and Second Wind. This is just to increase the mana cost multiplier of it enough to proc Adrenaline with 1 click. In my boots, I'm running Ensnaring Arrows, level 1 Ensnaring Arrow, level 1 Frenzy with Manaforge Arrow support. So this is a huge deal. This support gem is one of the biggest things they've added to this game in years. Now this build gets permanent frenzy charges for free. You'll notice that like every other attack, or is it every single attack? I can't tell. Maybe if we remove this. Yeah, so you'll notice that like blue or red projectile that's flying off of me every time I attack. That's Ensnaring Arrow and Frenzy and being fired off there. And that is due to like some stuff. Like the way this works is once you spend enough mana with whatever is linked here, it'll use that bow attack, and Frenzy can count as a bow attack, which means we have Ensnaring Arrow without having to micromanage the attack. And Ensnaring Arrow drastically increases the bleed damage enemies take. It's like triple damage or whatever. So you want to have enemies permanently ensnared in single target situations. So that removes a button from the build that you need to press there. And then for 1 gem socket, we can fit in Frenzy at the same time. And Frenzy will give us a Frenzy charge anytime it hits something. So we just have permanent Frenzy charges for free. We don't even need to run Blood Rage in the build and deal with the degen. And then Blood Rage doesn't give Frenzy charges on single target. We just get it for free all the time. So that's 2 button presses that you'd have to worry about that you just don't with Manaforge Arrow support. And it's more or less for free because they're level 1. Their mana cost is really low. And then we're running 30% of skills cost life instead of mana. So like a 30% life tap. And it's just every time it procs, it costs effectively nothing. And it's amazing quality of life. Oh my God. Do this for more things. Like this and Vol Reap, the dot having that linger effect if they leave the puddle. Those 2 things are just like massive quality of life, like gaming in 2023 type moments where it's like, oh my God, yes, like give us some QoL, man. It feels so good. Like Vol Reap's linger effect on the dot, and Manaforge arrows just feel so amazing. They feel very PoE2-esque, like updated skill design type, you know. Anyway, so that's big. Then we're running Flame Dash. In my unset ring, I'm running a Pride. And then in the chest piece, Chance to Bleed, Rain of Arrows, Maim, Brutality, and Vicious Proj. Now, Maim isn't our highest damage support here, but it's a big deal because it increases the damage of our Puncture, which is obviously our single target DPS. Let me turn the music down to the pad. So our 5-link Puncture and our bow is Puncture with Snipe, Deadly Ailments, Brutality, and Vicious Proj, with haste in that extra slot, and down here I have vulnerability in the extra slot. In my gloves, I'm running Molten Shell, Cast and Damage Taken, War Banner, and Determination. So the extra unset that I'll have to run is basically just one of these auras is going to have to find a home there, or the curse even, in the unset ring, the other unset ring. But right now I don't have a 6-link, so I don't have to worry about it yet. But once I do get another 6-link, it'll have to go. You may be wondering, like, you have one extra gym here because you have both of your 5-links have a extra thing. So if you 6-link both of them, you'd have to get rid of something. That's the Corrupting Fever support. So in the POB, I only have a 3-link. I'm running Second Wind and Life Tap on the Corrupting Fever, and then instead of Brutality, I have Vulnerability there. So the issue with that right now is that it takes me to exactly half. So if I had if I had like 50 to 100 less life, it would proc on 1 tap. So you either need to have more life where you don't immediately do that, or just have a little bit less life. But yeah, in the original POB, vulnerability is in there as well, because just vulnerability has like a high mana cost. So having it in that life tap support means that we don't have to worry about it. But yeah, for now, to keep my 1-button adrenaline press instead of having to hit it twice, yeah, I moved vulnerability out since I don't have a 6-link anyway, and threw Brutality in there to get the mana cost multiplier up just a little bit to take me below half. Anyway, so that's all of the links. Nothing too fancy, nothing too big there. So that's the passive tree and the links. I guess we'll go over the equipment. So right now, my gloves are what I'm getting mana leech from. This is really the only thing on these gloves. It's benchcraft life and mana leech. The resistance is good too, obviously. My belt right now is the hand-me-down belt that I was using on my Reap character before I started using Immortal Flesh to help with RF there, since that character doesn't have leech yet. So just a Stygian Vise with a bunch of resistances on it, and then a Searching Jewel with life and 20% increased damage if killed recently. My boot slot is probably one of the better slots that I have. It's a pair of Shagreen boots, pure evasion boots with a lot of life. It is T2 life with T1 hybrid life, which equates to like T0 life more or less, because T1 life is like 80 something life. So we got 96 life on these, a resist roll, max rolled T2 spell suppression, and an open prefix for onslaught on kill, which is how we're getting onslaught on the build while clearing. Something to note for people who may be confused, like why using a pure evasion base, why not armor? Like armor is preferably what you would want end game. However, it is ridiculously easy to roll spell suppression on pure evasion bases. So if you don't play a lot, or, you know, if you don't want to like super min-max a character, early game, whatever, go for evasion bases in your helmet, gloves, and boot slots, because it'll be way easier to roll those for your spell suppression. In the helmet slot, this helmet is literally dead weight. It's got nothing. 36 life and an open suffix for res. The reason I'm using it is that 8% mana reservation efficiency. Now, you would get this on the implicit with Eldritch currency. However, all my Eldritch currency has been going into gloves on my Reap character to get leech. So I didn't have it. So I just threw a loathing essence on the helmet to get it that way. And I didn't have a lot of them. So this is what I landed on. It's literally just a smidgen of life, an open suffix for a benchcraft, and then the actual essence mod itself. This piece of gear sucks. But it did give me enough mana reservation efficiency to run the triple aura setup and not have to mess with Divine Blessing and weapon swap anymore. So I'll take it. And then moving on, the rings I have on this ring, it's just life, resist, and an open prefix for Elrion craft minus mana cost of non-channeling skills. On the other one, I have my unset ring, which has +2 to level of socketed gems. It's why I'm using Pride here for some extra damage. Int, resist, damage taken, recouped his life, like who cares? But the important thing is the open prefix for the benchcraft. Channeling skills have minus mana to total mana cost, so that allows me to hold down Snipe for a very long time. So you'll notice that I can even hit, like even when I'm bottomed out on mana here, I can still hit 6 stages.
My spirit is spent.
With that one craft, so that's nice. Amulet, again, really nothing special here. I have life and some res. That's it. I've I've anointed Instinct for the time being to get some suppression. Right now I'm at 83% spell suppression, and I have 12% from my amulet, 12% from my boots, and 8% from my chest piece. That's it. I'm already at 83%. So capping suppression on this build is going to be no issue at all. So the chest piece itself is a really low suppress roll, some life and some resist. It's not anything crazy at all. And my quiver is actually pretty decent. It is T2 T2 flat fizz, a good life roll, a pretty whatever damage roll, and then good resist. Overall though, with all the mods combined, it's really nice to have 6 beneficial mods on an item. Flat fizz, increased damage with bow skills, life, and then a bunch of resistances on a broadhead quiver. So you can run broadhead for attack speed. You can run the other one that gives flat fizz. Attack speed will help you channel faster. Flat fizz will just increase the actual damage. You can run the one that gives +1 pierce to help with puncture. Like if a mob runs in front of an essence mob last second, you'll still be able to hit it, stuff like that. You have a lot of options for quivers on what base you prefer to use. Now, the weapon I'm using itself is pretty garbage. It's T2. It's T2 flat fizz with just benched on rank 2 effectively. Percent increased fizz damage. Now I did drop an exalt earlier, so I could bench on 130%, which may be worth it. So you may be wondering, like, how come when I'm looking at this it looks like flaring T1 flat fizz, but then when you hold alt it's T2? That's because I got a absolutely GG Crucible Tree for this build. All right, so this is the most exciting piece of gear that I have. So it adds 6 to 11 flat fizz damage, which basically moves up your flat fizz a tier. So you can think of it, if you get T1 flat fizz, it moves it up to tier 0. If you get T2 flat fizz, it moves it up to tier 1. So basically +1 tier to your flat fizz roll. We move down. Allocates deadly draw. This single node by itself in my original POB is like a 12 or 13% damage increase when you don't include the travel nodes up to it, which are also very good. But getting this for free is like having a second free anoint for your build, which is absolutely insane. Then we have +90 to dexterity, gain no inherent bonuses from dexterity. So first, the downside, doesn't matter because we take Magebane, which has literally the same wording. So they're the same thing. So we already don't get a benefit from dex, which doesn't matter that much anyway. And then +90 to dex is actually really important because right now I have a million dexterity, but that's because I have 60 dex on these gloves, 19 dex on the boots, +32 to all attributes on my amulet, and +33 dexterity on my helmet. Everything I have on gives me dex right now. When I take all that stuff off and I don't have dexterity on all that gear, I actually don't have enough dexterity for the build, which is 185 for the Citadel bow. So it having +90 dex means that we don't have to worry about pathing right side for all this extra dexterity, and end game we don't have to worry about getting dex rolls on our equipment. So that is actually a really good node. From there, this is it. 15% increased explicit physical damage modifier magnitudes. That's why when you look at this, it looks like I have the highest benchcraft for percent fizz damage and flaring, when I actually don't. I have a tier below, but 15% increased fizz modifiers on your weapon is insane. And then finally, the big one, Rain of Arrows and Toxic Rain deal 300% more damage with bleeding. So quadruple damage, more or less. Slightly less than quadruple, but quadruple damage, more or less. That, which is crazy. There's one for Snipe, which gives it like a bunch of attack speed or whatever, so it can channel faster, I believe. And yeah. Before people ask, what about Puncture, the one that gives you bleed pops and blah 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 blah? Don't use that, because even if you made like even if you didn't use like Rain of Arrows and you use Puncture in a clear setup, you it wouldn't be as good, and it wouldn't clear as fast as Rain of Arrows or Split Arrow without bleed pops. So I don't think that would be very good, because it would also feel pretty bad, because Puncture has that like innate like less attack speed multiplier on it or whatever. It's like super slow. Yeah, it's 70% base attack speed. Like if we take out Snipe, look how slow this is. I mean, maybe, but you'd have to solve Pierce and stuff. And I believe it's only monsters, like, originally I completely wrote it off because it was like only things killed by the hit was the way the leak had it worded. But apparently if things die to the bleed afterward, this will still pop. So if they do die to the bleed, maybe you could mess around with it and see. Maybe it would be worth using. I don't know if a Puncture clear setup would have more damage or less damage than the quadruple damage Rain of Arrows. Probably less. So it's probably not the best thing. Maybe it's usable. I don't know. Me personally, I'm not too interested in it though. Because it would definitely probably still clear faster, slower than just even Rain of Arrows without pops, because of how much clear, like effective AoE you have on this. Like, it's huge. One thing I will mention is that people pathing down into Deadly Draw, for one passive point over here, you can get 12% AoE. And then the Bow Mastery itself is 20% increased AoE. So you can get 32% increased AoE for 2 passive points if you path down there. And that makes your Rain of Arrows the entire screen. And clearing with that before I respec was very satisfying. I imagine with bleed pops, that will feel amazing, because it makes your Rain of Arrows. You can see now I cover about 2/3 of the screen on average, depending on the spread. When you get that 30% increased AoE, it's like literally just this much. It's like the whole screen. It feels amazing. And like normally scaling AoE, it's like, yeah, that it increases the spread of the projectiles too. So you might not get like overlaps, but we're a bleed build. We're not playing Crimson Dance. We only care about hitting things once, more or less. So we don't actually care if there's less overlap on the projectiles. It's actually beneficial because it means our damage is more effectively spread around. So it's really good for us. So that's the weapon. GG. I just need to craft it and 6-link it. So funnily enough, my first bow that I used, I 6-linked in like 5 fusings, and I actually had a pretty good roll on it. Yeah, this bow that I have right now, because of the Crucible Tree, does more damage than this 6-link bow on a 3-link. To put that into perspective, just because the Crucible Tree is so insane. Anyway, that's more or less everything. I think I went over everything on the build. We went over the gear, we went over the passive tree. I guess real quick, the Flasks, as always, I use the same Flask setup in like almost every build I do, so I'm not too pressed to go over it. But we're using a Seething Divine, instant recovery, CB removal. Now, preferably on all of your prefixes, you want to get charges gained on hit. I don't have that on any of these, but that's what you want to have. And then we have reduce effective shock, reduce effective curse, and additional elemental resistances during effects. This helps with curses and exposure. And then increase armor during Flask effect. That's the setup you want. Until you get the Pantheon of Bri King for freeze immunity, you can roll one of these for freeze immunity instead. And then benchcraft the instilling for charges, use Flask when charges are full. Means it'll completely automate your Flasks for you and use them automatically while you're mapping, so you don't need to press the buttons. And then with this mastery here, every time those Flasks top off and use, you'll heal yourself for a bunch of your life. And that's everything, more or less. That's pretty much it. The way you play the build is you just Rain of Arrows will kill 99% of stuff. Vol Rain of Arrows does more damage. That's pretty much, it's basically Rain of Arrows with slightly more AoE and some delayed waves, but it just does more damage. So like if you encounter like a tanky rare or a tanky magic pack or something that has like fizz resist, you don't need to snipe them. You can just use Vol Rain of Arrows. And then War Banner, I have it just in case I want to throw it down, but you don't throw it down 90% of the time anyway because you already have Adrenaline. And on the map boss or like a super tanky essence monster or something, you channel your Snipe. Now, something I guess I should go over. The reason a lot of people thought this was going to be bait is because I feel like a lot of people, the way they have POB'd this or looked at builds of this in the past, is they think, like, okay, I want to, you know, get my tooltip up as much as high as I can. Looking at POB, I want my DPS to go up. I want my DPS to go up, blah, 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 blah. And then they get in game and then it feels terrible to play. And the reason I think that is because you may notice that I'm not using Malevolence in the build, even though Malevolence on paper would be a massive damage increase. That's because instead of Malevolence, we're using Haste, and I think Haste is mandatory for this. And I guess I'll go over why Asylum is not as good. Sorry, I'm a little bit scatterbrained today. So Haste is huge. Now I'm going to turn Haste off, and then I'm going to channel. Okay. Now I'm going to turn Haste on, and I'm going to channel. It like cuts the time down significantly. It's much faster. And that's without having any attack speed on my bow, which attack speed on your weapon increases its like base attack speed. So it like something like Haste will be more effective when the base attack speed of my weapon is higher. So end game, it'll take you like a second to hit max charges on the Snipe, which is very fast. Whereas if you're using Malevolence and not focusing on attack speed, because it doesn't actually give you any DPS value in POB, it's going to take a really long time for your Snipe to go off, and it's going to feel way worse. Especially when we mention the next thing, which is Asylum, and how people played that. So, anybody have any guesses on the biggest downside of Asylum and why it's not good? I'll take a drink of water. Correct. It limits your use of a benchcraft. And why is that important? Well, because our benchcraft here, that I don't have, I'm pretty sure. Oh, I have it. Sick. 70% increased duration of ailments you inflict while focused. So, why is that a big deal? Well, you'll be able to basically have 100% uptime on that. And using that, your Snipe will go from lasting like, I don't know, like 6 seconds, 7 seconds, whatever it is, to lasting like 13 to 15 seconds, which is way longer. So if we take into account the fact of using Haste and being able to get a Snipe off that only takes 1 second to come out, and the fact that you, with the focus duration, which was not possible before, right? Because it's a helmet craft and you had to use Asylum, will double, almost double the duration of the bleed. Then we get a bleed that comes out way, way faster and is up for way, way longer, which means over the course of an entire boss fight, it is 1, way less tedious to deal with, and 2, translates to more real world DPS because we don't have to mess with all these unknown variables. We have way more consistent damage that lasts for way longer and comes out easier. It's just way more consistent. And like the rule with dots and everything that people have said in PoE a million times, dot skills are really good because it's consistent DPS uptime. Now, what these changes do, Haste won't increase your DPS on PoB. Duration of your bleed won't really increase the DPS of your DPS on PoB. But when you're in a realistic scenario killing a boss, those two things are going to drastically, like exponentially increase your DPS due to the factor of ease of use, quality of life, and uptime. They're huge. And it's just something that just doesn't increase the number in PoB, so it's something I feel like a lot of people don't think about. But it's absolutely game-changing for Bleed Bow, and why it won't feel bad to play. So hopefully that makes sense, and hopefully you guys see where I'm coming from on that. The build has been super comfy to play. No qualms about it at all. It's just been really, really fun. It maps fast. It's super tanky because it's a champ. Hopefully I get Haemophilias before the character is level 99, or before the character dies, or before I stop playing, or whatever. Hopefully I get Haemophilias. And hopefully I also get some cluster jewels, because I'm pain champing really hard farming for them. It's like been many days. Anyway, I'm gonna end the video here. Once again, as soon as you see this video go live, I'll likely be live over on Twitch. So head over there, say hi to me, toss me a follow on Twitch. If you like the videos I'm throwing up here on YouTube, subscribe, ring the little notification bell. Tell me down in the comments what you would like to see next. I like doing these build update videos, but I'm also open to doing other content. So if there's something specific you guys would like to see me talk about, you want my opinion on something, or maybe you want me to explain something because you like the way that I go into detail on stuff, let me know what you guys want to see, and I will do my best to accommodate that that want or that need, right? Yeah, join my Discord channel. I have a build help channel over there. You can post whatever issues you're having. Just come in with a POB and what your issues are, and then I'll work through it with you and try to help you solve that. Pretty active in there whenever I'm not streaming. And I have a cool community of people in there that are really active, talk every day. If you just want, you know, like a community to hang out with. And then I'm on Twitter. So if you're on Twitter, toss me a follow, and then maybe I'll tweet sometimes. And that's everything. Appreciate you guys a bunch. I'll see you in the next one. Hope this was interesting. Hope you had fun. Stay safe.